every once in a while, we have so many things that seem to pile up, and some of them are just little things, but as they go, they pile up. And when we think that God or the universe is against us, we begin to feel fragmented and feel cut off from our source. And we feel also cut off from others and even ourselves. And we long for a feeling of wholeness. And I was thinking about wholeness, and I was thinking, what does that mean, really? What does wholeness mean? So I went looking for definitions, and I found some that I thought suited our purpose this morning. The first one is, spirit is transcendent, perfect, whole, and contains and embraces all seeming opposites. As human beings, we have free will and can choose what we experience, whether it is positive or negative. And the second one I found was, wholeness is the concept that we contain all potentials for any action, thought, or energy tone, like emotion or feeling. And while we might not express the potentials in any particular manner, we know that they are within us. Once upon a time, I say that in a kind of a way because this was in my life a long time ago, and it doesn't seem real anymore, and it doesn't seem like me anymore, but at the time it was a very real thing. I was really having some problems with low energy and anxiety. And I heard that there was a shaman who did soul retrieval. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of soul retrieval. But I was kind of, I was really rather desperate at the time, and I thought, well, if anything would help, I'm up for it. So I went to see the shaman, and to see if that would just give me any insight into how I might feel better. And according to the shaman, I had several parts of myself that had split off and needed to be retrieved. So I said, well, okay, let's do it. So one part that had split off was a baby part of myself. And evidently, when I was born and I came into the world, there was a part of me that said, I don't like it here, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. I'm going back to where I came from. Well, of course, the baby, that part of me, had split off. Next, there was a little girl that had split off, who did not feel accepted in her life, and she too decided that she would leave. And after that, then there was a young woman who decided that she would go in search of these two missing parts, but in searching for them, she became lost. And the reason I mention this is that through the years, parts of me evidently felt that the world was against me, and consequently, parts of me had split off. Now, whether you believe that this is possible or not, whether I believe it or not, I don't know. But I'm happy to report that after being brought back together, I began to feel better. So whether or not this was really true, or whether this ceremony just seemed to do something for me in some way, I can't really say. But I know that the results were good. So who we are today sets up tomorrow's stage, and what's happening today is what we set up yesterday. That's a very profound quote that I think is very important to us to totally remember. And I notice that we all know this. I know we all know this, but we often forget. We often forget about it. And so it's important that we remember this so that what we're doing in this moment matters. What we're thinking in this moment, what we're doing in this moment, what we're saying in this moment absolutely matters. Do you ever say, I'm having one of those days? If you wake up and bump into the furniture, and then you burn your tongue on your coffee, and you say to yourself, I'm going to have one of those days, I just know it. Well, this morning, I got up and I was getting ready, and one of the things I try to do when I'm getting ready is to clean my glasses. And so I was cleaning my glasses and I was spraying them with that spray, you know. And I noticed that one glass, I can see fairly well without them, but not totally. It was like one side of the glass was not like there was no spray on it. And I thought, this is odd. And I'm looking, I'm trying to see, you know. I'm trying to look at them, and all of a sudden I realized I stick my finger through. There's nothing there. There's no lens there. And I think, okay. When I sat on the bed last night, I heard something go crunch. And I saw it was my glasses, and I picked them up, and they looked okay. They weren't bent, you know, around or anything. And I thought, well, they're fine. Well, of course, I didn't have my glasses on, so I just put them aside. And then I thought, oh, I think I better go look in the bed and see if there's a lens in there. So I'm, you know, and I found it. And I thought, oh, I can pop that back in, not a problem. Well, 10 minutes later, it still wasn't popped in. And so I said to myself, well, I don't have time to spend any more time here, so I'm going to go on. Now, I could have said to myself, I think it's going to be one of those days. But I didn't. Because I knew what would happen if I did. If I said that, I would have one of those days. And I thought, I can't afford to have one of those days today. That isn't in the cards. It can't happen. So I said to myself, I have a spare pair in my office desk, and I will wear those. Let me tell you, they're not my regular prescription at the moment. But I have them, and let me see how it looks. I think I can do just about as well without them, to tell you the truth. Anyway, you know, we all have ways of coping with what happens to us. And we have ways of knowing that our brains have a filtering system that filters what is and what is not important to us. And so we make those distinctions of what is and what is not important to us. And we only notice the things that are important. Most of the time, the brain translates how we're thinking about whatever is happening. And if we have a negative filter, we see things that happen pessimistically, don't we? If we have on our negative filter, we're going to be pessimistic about what it is we see. And if we have a positive filter, we're going to see things through an optimistic filter. And I think that pessimism is, I think of it as being closed. You know, when we're pessimistic, there aren't many options. But when we're optimistic, there are many, many options. We have many things that we can do. If our consciousness is in bondage to the past, or attention is mesmerized according to ingrained patterns of awareness, or is pessimistic, the future is simply an extended line of the here and now. Things aren't going to change. They're not going to change much. We're going to continue to do what we did. And that's what makes the future predictable. Now, if you don't want anyone to be able to tell what's going to happen in your future, don't make it predictable. Make sure that you are open to change, that you are open to doing things differently. 3 weeks ago, I decided I had been here a lot of evenings. I'd been here so many evenings, and then I was doing things outside, so I was never at home. And I decided I needed a break. And we had a guest speaker coming in, so I said, aha, this is my opportunity. And I think that I will take this weekend off and go away. Sometimes you just need to get out of town, right? You know how that is? You just have to get out of town. Well, I felt like I just needed to get out of town, so I asked a friend if she would like to do a getaway weekend. And she said yes, she would, but then she checked her calendar and she was happened to be going to her son's that weekend. So that wasn't going to work out. And so I had talked to my sister-in-law and her husband about doing something in Pennsylvania for, 2 years. So I called him up and I said, hey, I've got a weekend. Do you have this weekend and could you do this? And they said, yeah, I think we could do this. And so they said, where would you like to go? And I said, I don't know. We'll just look for a place and we'll just meet up there. And so I'm thinking, this is cool. We'll actually do this. And as we were going through it, it turns out that my brother-in-law's work got in the way. It seems that my brother-in-law is an attorney, and he had someone that it looked like might be sent up for execution. And so he really couldn't leave town or go very far that he had to be back in Philadelphia. So they said, we're really sorry, but we're not going to be able to do this. Well, I felt a little sad about that, and I felt a little rejected. And I thought, where's that coming from? After all, it was a life or death situation, but I still felt that way. And so I decided to check with my daughter, who lives not far from here in New York, and it turned out that she had something that weekend that she simply could not change. So then I thought, I really felt a little rejected again. And I thought, well, what is that about? And then I saw Joan and Dan at church on Sunday. And I asked them if they had a room available at Idlewild in Lakeside. And they said, well, I don't know. We have a group coming in, and we're not sure that we have a room for you. And I said, well, okay. They said, but if something comes up, if we have a cancellation, we'll let you know. I said, fine, that's good. But I was tempted to think, poor me. What's going on? Nobody wants me. Oh, yeah, it was so sad. And, there was a time when I thought I had finite possibilities. That if something didn't work out, it just didn't work out, and that meant I wasn't going to do anything. I would stay at home and feel sorry for myself. And I thought, no, I've got other plans. There are other possibilities here. I'm not going to go there. And so we often feel like, we often don't realize that we have lots of possibilities. And you don't have to step out of your, you often, though, feel like when you have those finite possibilities of like none, you don't have to step out of your comfort zone. You don't have to do something different. It would have been totally within my comfort zone to stay home that weekend. Totally. And I could have done that. And I probably would have felt okay with it. But you know what? I knew that my spirit needed to get out of town. So I decided, well, I'm doing something no matter what it is, if I have to, whatever. So anyway, limited possibilities are only in our heads and limited only by our own minds. And that's all I remember that, I'm only limited by my own mind. And I learned several lessons by this experience. And the first lesson that I learned is knowing that we are often in conflict within ourselves. I was definitely in conflict within myself. We think, how many of you say, I have no conflict in my life? You don't have to raise your hand, because I'm going to rebut it. We all have conflicts in our lives. They may not be big conflicts. They may be small conflicts, and sometimes we don't even notice them. We don't even notice that they're there, but they are. And there was this conflict in my life, and I didn't realize it really at first until it was kind of pointed out to me. And I thought, I do have some conflicts in my life. And we feel let down or rejected, while at the same time knowing that there are often extenuating circumstances which have nothing to do with us personally. Nothing at all. They have nothing to do with us. And so the second thing that I learned was that we have infinite possibilities, that there is always another plan in the works, even if I didn't go to Lakeside. And then in our book, The Eye of the Storm, it says this: is your field of dreams mined, booby-trapped, or filled with hostile forces waiting to ambush you? Do you dread venturing out into the sea of infinite possibilities, afraid of being torpedoed and sunk midway in your voyage toward fulfillment? Indeed, it is understandable how we tend to armor ourselves when life looks and feels scary. Life looks and feels scary to us sometimes, even though it doesn't seem rational even to us. It might seem that the world of circumstances and people are against us, and that we can feel rejection and fear. But the universe will give us what we want. You know what? But we don't believe it's possible. Often we know it intellectually, we do not believe that it's possible. And we have to get past that. We have to move into a new place. So let's take a moment and think about it. What conflict is happening in your life right now? Are you looking through... I'm going to ask you to just take a moment, just close your eyes on this one, because I want you to really kind of think about this. It's not going to take a long time, but it's going to take a few minutes. So what conflict is happening in your life right now? Just take a moment to think about it. It may be teeny tiny. You didn't even notice it before. It might be large and looming. Then ask yourself the question, am I looking through this in a pessimistic or an optimistic way? Am I looking at this situation from an optimistic or pessimistic point of view? Then ask yourself, how might I see from a higher, more positive perspective? Thank you. I hope you got some insight from that into what's going on in your life. The third thing I learned is even when it seems that all doors are closed, something wonderful can happen if we keep our options open. Something wonderful can happen. And we need to believe that nothing or no one is against me. So a week before last, I received an email from Joan that they had a cancellation and did indeed have a room for me. And it was fine with the group that was having the retreat there. And so I went, and I had a wonderful, peaceful, informative weekend that changed me in some significant ways. Sometimes it helps to get out of town. While I was there, Joan handed me a book. And I said, this book looks familiar. I think I have it in my library. And so I took it and I said, I think I read it, but I didn't remember it. So I took the book and I started to read it. And the name of the book is The Second Half of Your Life by Angela Sarian. And I do indeed have that book in my library. And when I realized when I started reading the book there that I had started reading the book and really thought it was terribly boring, and it didn't really mean a thing to me, and I didn't finish it. I just read the first few pages and put it down and put it back on the shelf. Well, the book that I thought was so tedious several years ago now came alive for me. It truly spoke to my heart and it spoke to my soul. And there was a great awakening within me of perhaps I needed to do something different with my life than what I had planned to do. And you know, I'll know, because you've talked to me and I tell you everything from up here, you know. and I thought, you know what? I don't want to be tied to a house. I don't want to be tied to a yard, even though I love them. I want to travel. I want to go to places like Lakeside and see the beautiful trees on the water and all this. And I thought, I want to do more of that and less work. I wonder where that came from. And so I made different plans. Now, I have to tell you, those plans may change. Because I am so open-ended right now that anything could happen. So I'm saying to you, keep your options open as much as you can. You know, I'm in a place in my life where I can really open them wide open. But not everyone is in that place at the moment. But there are doors that you can open that you haven't looked at yet. And so I invite you to do that. So I plan to read this book again and do all of the exercises. I just skimmed through it. In fact, I hadn't even finished all of the chapters. But I came home and sure enough, it is in my library and I'm now finishing it. And then I'm going to go back and do all the exercises in it because I think it's going to be important for me to do that. And as an extra added bonus, I met some wonderful women from Columbus who were at this retreat. And they asked me to be a part of their final session. And after that, they said, why don't you come with us next year? Why don't you plan to come next year and be with us on a retreat? And so if I'm available, I certainly will do that. It was very nice. And I realized the universe is certainly on my side. It's on my side. And it's on our side when we're not really getting stressed out, when we're not worrying, when we're not doing things that are keeping us, you know, in this tight little box we have put ourselves in. Because many of us have put ourselves in a box. And I've lived in boxes. I know how that is. I know how it feels. And I also know that there is a way out. There is a way out. There is a time and a place for everything. And I hope that this is the time and the place for you to realize the gifts of this fall program. You know, it has many gifts for us. And the eye of the storm has valuable lessons for us to enhance our lives and create the life that up until this point we have only dreamed of. This week's lesson is not going to make you get it, so to speak, today. You know, I don't have time to give you the entire thing in 20 minutes, or maybe more. This 6-week program is designed to take you to the understanding of what's going on within you and to gradually make changes in how you respond to the conflicts of life. Listening to one lesson on the eye of the storm is not going to change your life, but as you begin to notice the conflict in your life and the emotions and the thoughts that surround it, you will learn to begin to see it from a new perspective. Now, if you will look in your bulletin, you will find 2 red strips of paper. One is very long and one is short. I invite you to take that long piece out and to affirm it with me. And after we affirm it, to write your name in that space that's left blank. Because as we read it, we're going to say our own name. And if you find that you read this and you don't agree with it, I ask you to take it on faith. Just take it on faith for now. And see if at the end of our 6 weeks, you can see it and say it with a real conviction in your heart that it is so. So together, let us say it together. I, Barbara, accept that the universe is on my side, working for the greater good. Write your name in the space and pass it to the center aisle, and the ushers will come by with a basket and pick it up. Then you notice there's another little piece of red paper in your bulletin, and it has the same affirmation on it. I invite you to take this one home. Do not pass it in. Take it home, and don't do this now, but when you get there, there's some paper on the back. Very gently, carefully, peel the paper off so that there's something sticky left on there, double-sided tape, and stick it on your medicine cabinet or your bathroom mirror. So that the first thing that you see every morning is this little affirmation, and I invite you to say it out loud to yourself in the mirror. Say it out loud until it becomes ingrained in your consciousness. And those of you who couldn't believe it, we'll see at the last day of our fall program if perhaps there's been a shift in your awareness. Listening to one lesson, then another, on the eye of the storm is going to start a process for a significant life change. It's going to happen. And sometimes we're afraid of change because we're afraid that we look through that pessimistic filter and say, oh yeah, not that kind of change. Look through your optimistic filter and see that this change is going to be for your highest good. And as you begin to notice the conflicts in your life and emotions, and the emotions and the thoughts around them, you can begin to change your perception and your response. In the next few weeks, you will come to realize that the universe is on your side. Is that okay with you? Thank you.